All right, let's do a quick recap of our two formulas, or actually our one formula that we have, but we're going to do it two different notations. So when f inverse is the notation that's being used, the derivative of the inverse function is equal to 1 over the derivative of the original function evaluated at the inverse. If for some reason f prime, sorry, not f prime, but f inverse is called g, which I actually like better because I don't like the little -1. I think it gets very confusing sometimes. But let's say that g is the inverse of f. I might write that another way. I might say that, okay, we're going to call g the inverse of f. So in that case, if we want to find g prime of x, and we know that g is the inverse of f, it's still going to be 1 over the derivative of the original function evaluated at the inverse, right? So either of those work. They're the same thing. We're just replacing f inverse with g, right? They're the same thing. All right, so let's look at example 5. Sometimes in these types of problems, we are given all of the pieces we need, and then we just have to put them together to get the answer. So in this one, they're telling us that f of 3 is 5, and f prime of 3 is 7/2. And then it asks us to find f inverse prime of 5. So since that's what it's asking us, that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start by writing that exact same thing down, exactly what they're asking us to find. We need to find the derivative of the inverse at 5. So we're going to use our formula for the derivative of the inverse. And the derivative of the inverse is 1 over the derivative of the function at the inverse. So we're doing that at 5. So notice x is 5. So we're replacing all the x's in that formula with 5's. All right, so now we just have to do some work to figure out what these things are. The first thing we need to fill in is this. What is the f inverse of 5? Well, they didn't give it to us exactly, but they almost did. What they did do is they tell us that f of 3 equals 5. So over here on the side, we know, oops, let me back up on that. I need a pen. We know that f of 3 is 5, which means f inverse of 5 must be 3. So they actually did give us f inverse of 5. It equals 3. So we can replace that f inverse of 5 with a 3. And now we need to know what f prime of 3 is. So in this case, again, they gave us f prime of 3. That's nice. F prime of 3 is 7/2. So this is 1 over 7/2. And 1 over 7/2 is just 2/7. And that is our final answer. All right, sometimes we are not given all of the pieces. And when that happens, we are going to end up having to do some work to find f inverse and to find f prime. That's the work that we're going to have to do, okay? So we are going to need to do some work to find this, and we'll need to do some work to find this before we can use the formula. However, we're going to start with the formula and do that work on the side. So they're telling us an equation for f of x, and then they're asking us to find the derivative of f inverse at 2, the derivative of the inverse. So we're going to start with exactly what they're asking us to find. Okay, start with that notation. When in doubt, start with what they're asking for and see if you can figure it out from there. So we know f inverse prime of 2. We're going to use our formula for derivative of the inverse is 1 over f prime of f inverse of 2. Okay, so we got to figure out what f inverse of 2 is. Well, we don't have f inverse of 2. All we have is this, f of x. So we got to do a little thinking here. They give us f of x. If we're looking for f inverse of 2, when it's an x for f inverse, it's a y for f of x. So we actually need to figure out where x cubed plus 2x minus 1 equals 2. That's what we need to figure out. When does that happen? And the problem with this is we can't actually factor this. This is a cubic and there's an x and we don't have a way to factor it. So I'm going to introduce you to a long tradition in mathematics. It's a really important strategy called guess and check. And I say that with a little bit of laughter, but it's an honest to goodness strategy. So we're just going to pick some numbers to plug in for x and see what works. We're going to start small with 0, and we're just going to kind of go up from there. And most likely we're going to hit something pretty quick. Okay. So if I plugged a 0 in for x, I would get 0 plus 0 minus 1. That would not work. So I'm going to try a 1. Let's plug a 1 in. That would be 1 plus 2, because 2 times 1 would be 2. So 1 plus 2 would be 3. Minus 1, that's 2. That's it. That does it. Okay. So we're going to plug in a 1 cubed plus 2 times 1 minus 1 equals 2. That's 3 minus 1. So we're good. Fabulous. What that means, we just plugged a 1 in for x. So that means that f of 1 equals 2. Great. That also tells us that f inverse of 2 equals 1. And that is the thing that we need to know. Okay, so f inverse of 2 equals 1. We did our work there. Okay, so now we can say that this is f inverse, or f prime of 1. All right, we got to find f prime of 1 now. Okay, they didn't give that to us, but we do have an equation for f of x. And we do have rules that let us find derivatives. I know how to find f prime of x, so I'm going to come over here and do that work. F prime of x is 3x squared plus 2. So f prime of 1 is 3 times 1 squared plus 2, which is 5. Okay, so f of prime of 1 is 5, and so I just replace it. This is 1 over 5, and that is my final answer.